Prescription drug DUI in Pennsylvania? Here's what you need to know. So you're driving home, you took your medication exactly as prescribed. Maybe it was a pain medication, an anxiety medication, or a sleep aid you'd been on for months. You got pulled over, and now you're facing a DUI charge. And you're thinking, how is this possible? I have a valid prescription. Here's the answer nobody wants to hear. In Pennsylvania, a valid prescription does not cancel out a DUI charge. And these cases are more common than most people realize. I'm Sean Quinlan, Pennsylvania DUI-based attorney here in Camp Hill. Let's talk about what a prescription drug DUI actually means, how these cases are built, and where the real defenses are. What Pennsylvania law actually says. Pennsylvania DUI law covers more than alcohol. It covers any drug, including legally prescribed medication, if that drug is alleged to have impaired your ability to drive safely. The key word here is alleged. The issue under Pennsylvania law is not just what you took, it's what prosecutors say it did to you behind the wheel. A lot of people assume a lawful prescription works like a shield. It doesn't. If a medication allegedly slowed your reactions, blurred your judgment, or made you too drowsy to drive safely, you can still face criminal charges. And here's what catches people off guard. Taking medication exactly as prescribed and driving safely are two completely separate issues under Pennsylvania law. A legal prescription may explain why the drug was in your system. It does not automatically defeat the charge. The case still turns on alleged impairment. And proving impairment, or challenging it, is where everything actually happens. Which medications come up most often? Certain medication categories show up in these cases again and again. Number 1, opioid and pain medications can cause drowsiness, slow reaction time, and affect coordination. Number 2, benzodiazepines, anti-anxiety medications like Xanax, Klonopin, can affect coordination, focus, and response time. Number 3, sleep aids can leave lingering grogginess well into the next morning, even after what feels like a full night's sleep. Number 4, stimulants, ADHD meds, can create different issues at the wrong dose, including impaired judgment or agitation. Number 5, antidepressants and muscle relaxers can affect alertness in ways that vary person to person and day to day. The risk goes up when a dose changes, when you start a new prescription, when you combine medications, or when any amount of alcohol is also in the picture. Your body doesn't always react the same way every time, and that variability is part of why these cases are complicated. So how do police build a prescription drug DUI case? Most of these cases start with a traffic stop, a crash, or some driving behavior that draws attention. After that, things move fast, and a normal evening can become a criminal case before you've had time to process what's happening. Officer observations. Officers look for slow speech, confusion, poor balance, droopy eyelids, delayed responses. The problem is obvious. Those same signs can come from fatigue, anxiety, illness, a medical condition, or the stress of being pulled over. If you were shaken up after a stop or an accident, that context is going to matter. Field sobriety testing. Field sobriety tests aren't just for alcohol cases. Police can use them in prescription drug DUI investigations too, and they may treat missteps, swaying, or trouble following instructions as evidence of impairment. But those tests are administered on the side of a road, usually in the dark, sometimes in bad weather, sometimes in street shoes or on uneven pavement. They don't always reflect what they're supposed to reflect. Blood testing. Blood testing is common in Pennsylvania drug DUI cases. Unlike a breath test that gives a number immediately, blood has to go to a lab, which means timing, handling, and chain of custody all become part of the picture. DRE, Drug Recognition Experts. Police may also bring in what's called a drug recognition expert, DRE, an officer specifically trained to identify signs associated with drug impairment. Think of it as a checklist-based opinion, not a medical diagnosis. It can be challenged. The blood test problem nobody explains. Here's something that matters a lot in these cases and rarely gets explained clearly. A blood test can show that a medication was present in your system. What it often cannot show is exactly when you took it, or whether it was actually impairing you at the moment you were driving. That gap is significant. If you took your medication hours before getting in the car, if you took it at the prescribed dose before bed and drove the next morning, if your prescription level is consistent with therapeutic use and nothing more, those facts tell a very different story than a lab report number sitting on its own. Blood levels don't always equal impairment. Without context, your prescription history, your dosage, the timing, your doctor's instructions, numbers can look more conclusive than they actually are. And that's exactly the kind of context a defense needs to surface. What do penalties actually look like? Prescription drug DUI in Pennsylvania is typically treated at the highest DUI tier, the same tier as a 0.16% BAC alcohol case or an illegal drug case. That means the penalties are not minor. Depending on the facts, you could be looking at jail time, significant fines, probation, mandatory treatment requirements, license suspension, and a criminal record that shows up on background checks. If there was an accident involved, prior DUI history, or another substance in the mix, the exposure climbs quickly. First offense? If this is your first DUI, ARD may be on the table. Pennsylvania's pretrial diversion program that can help eligible first-time offenders avoid conviction if they complete the program. But even ARD can come with license consequences that affect your ability to go to work, manage daily life, and keep your schedule running. Repeat offenses? A second or third DUI brings mandatory minimum penalties that significantly limit what an attorney can negotiate. Pennsylvania doesn't treat repeat offenses like paperwork. The stakes rise fast. CDL holders? A DUI can threaten your commercial driving privileges even if the arrest was in your personal vehicle. Your job may be at risk before the criminal case is anywhere near resolved. Licensed professionals, nurses, teachers, healthcare workers, contractors. A DUI charge can create reporting obligations, licensing board scrutiny, and background check problems that outlast the court case itself. For some careers, the consequences reach far beyond the courtroom. Where are the real defenses? This is the part I want you to hear clearly. Prescription drug DUI cases are often more open to challenge than people assume going in. The prosecution still has to prove impairment. That is not automatic just because a medication showed up in a blood test. Here's where cases can get weaker. The traffic stop itself. Police need a valid legal reason to stop you. If the stop was questionable, if the driving behavior that triggered it was minor or ambiguous, that foundation can be challenged, and everything built on top of it may be affected. Field sobriety testing. As I mentioned earlier, these tests are administered in conditions that can produce unreliable results. Fatigue, anxiety, injury, nervousness, footwear, pavement, and lighting all matter. A defense looks carefully at how the tests were explained, administered, and scored. Blood testing procedures. The chain of custody, the documented trail showing who handled your blood sample and when, has to be maintained properly. Storage, handling, lab processing, and documentation all come with requirements. Problems in any of those areas can affect the reliability of the result. Alternative explanations for impairment signs. Exhaustion looks like impairment. Anxiety looks like impairment. A medical condition looks like impairment. If nobody pushes back on the officer's interpretation of what they observed, it becomes the accepted version of events. The defense makes sure that doesn't happen by default. Prescription records and timing. Your medication history, dosage instructions, refill records, and any recent changes in your prescription can all provide critical context. When you took the medication, how much, under what instructions, that information can change the picture significantly. A blood test result without that context is an incomplete story. So what do you do after an arrest? If you've been arrested for a prescription drug DUI in Pennsylvania, here's what to do right now. Gather your medication information immediately. Prescription bottles, written dosage instructions, pharmacy records, any recent changes in your prescription, and any documentation from your doctor. If you had a recent appointment or a dosage adjustment, save the paperwork. Collect every document from the arrest. Charging documents, bail paperwork, court date notices, property receipts, everything goes in one folder. Write down what happened while it's still fresh. When you took your medication, what you took, how much, what you ate, where you were going, what happened during the stop, what was said, whether you did field sobriety tests. when blood was drawn. Details fade fast, and they can matter significantly. Don't make additional statements. Not to police, not casually to friends, not on social media. Trying to explain yourself outside of a legal context usually creates problems rather than solving them. Time matters in these cases. The sooner the case gets reviewed, the sooner weak spots can be identified before they harden into the prosecution's version of events. A prescription drug DUI in Pennsylvania is a serious charge, but having a valid prescription doesn't mean the case is open and shut against you. The prosecution still has to prove impairment, and there are real places to push back in almost every one of these cases. The worst thing you can do is assume the lab report settles it and plead guilty before anyone has looked carefully at the stop, the testing, the timing, and the context around your prescription. If you've been charged with a prescription drug DUI in Pennsylvania and want to understand where your case actually stands, reach out. Free consultation, no pressure, links in the description. Subscribe for more straight talk on Pennsylvania DUI law. See you in the next video.